There's no way you can divorce transport business from port operations. And with transport, there's a whole chain of other businesses that are connected to transport. And it varies from mama mboga to border border guys to spare dealers, and also to the exchequer through the there are many taxes that are charged on fuel, like the fuel tax, RDL on the fuel that all the trucks do consume. Imagine one truck going to Kampala has to consume 900 to 1,000 liters of fuel. To Nairobi, almost 400 liters. So imagine the number of trucks that were on the road. All of them are no longer fueling, and like all the most of them are not fueling anymore, because all the monies are going to the SGR. And then leave alone that, all the all the trucks that were laid off or grounded used to pay a total of 44,000 per year inspection fees to the government. That's also a loss of income to the government. But okay, leave alone that. On the city of Mombasa, we had lost a lot, and Mombasa had become a ghost town. You go to a place like Shimanzi, where it was a beehive of activity, where people used to load. We had those porters who used to load the trucks. They're no longer there. All those go downs. That's real estate which is lying idle right now, like which has been lying idle for the past 2 3 years. But right now, we hope that with the order, uh, it will be easy for importers to just decide where they intend, like where they prefer their cargo to be cleared from. We have no problem with the SGR. It is growth for the country. But our only problem was the forced evacuation of containers from Mombasa to Nairobi and onto Naivasha, and we were just lucky that okay, our fight got like an unlikely defender in the government of Uganda. Uh, remember these guys were trying to force Uganda, even through lies, to use the SGR to transport their cargo up to Naivasha, and then Ugandan importers were supposed to be picking their cargo from Naivasha, but importers in Uganda had to lobby their president, and Museveni said no. These guys had to come up with a order that only 30% of the cargo that comes through the port of Mombasa to be cleared through Mombasa, which was transit cargo. Otherwise, Uganda and South Sudan had been twisted by Masharia through lies and through, they had to use deceit, which is wrong. So when Uganda said no, that's when we had to retain the 30%, and that's what has been keeping Mombasa alive. Otherwise, um, real estate in Mombasa had gone down in prices, and we had a lot of to let. Most of the shops on Moy Avenue, most of the shops of the houses in Changamwe, where most of the truck drivers and the mechanics and the turnmen were residing in, were all vacant. Most of them are vacant even now. So we expect the return of transport business to be back in Mombasa, whereby the positive effect will go towards even real estate, or like we'll have a boom in real estate also as a result
Okay,
of the order.
Thank you for that. But my bigger concern in this conversation is to try and understand why, in the first place, did we have change of interest to have things being cleared in Naivasha for that matter? Because we understand the SGR coming in was supposed to help move products even faster. I mean, goods that are being cleared from the port. But in this case, you are arguing more on the aspect of the economic impact that the relocation had on Mombasa as a city. What can we say was the main reason these changes actually happen? Is it about a political interest? Was it individual interest? What exactly can we say was the problem? If I can have maybe Victor come in, if you don't mind, and later on, I'm trying to invite Mr. Okwiri and Hussein Khalid from Haki Africa to speak to us. If you can see the mics, kindly accept the mics. For now, Victor, you want to take a kick on that? Victor?
Yes. Hey, Eddie. Thank you for hosting the show and all the speakers and listeners. So I want to make a few observations concerning the, converting back the port to KPA. So I have a few assumptions, although I don't have reliable sources, but I can just work on hypotheses. If we look into the number of berths that are available in Mombasa port, how many of those, are controlled by the government? Because I just did like a search and it's only 4 of them. So I presume maybe the rest are, controlled by private individuals. So a port is a very important thing. It's just like an airport to any government. So the government has to have solid control of it. And this involves a lot of interest, especially when it comes to, collection of revenues. And we've got the VATs and all those revenue collections that are supposed to be done. So in the event that there is lack of integrity, the government will lose a lot of funds from either export or imports commodities. So looking into this, as the other speakers have alluded to, you can see clearly that the involvement of these private partners or the SGR has not been efficient to the government and also for the people of Mombasa County. Because at the end of the road, the inhabitants of that city or the county need to derive benefits from these resources. So if they are not benefiting from it, then it doesn't serve the purpose of raising the standards of the population across that stretch of the coast. So my assumption, I think, the government wants to streamline issues to do with the revenue collection, also to try and fight the corruption. And again, if you can look back into those private companies, who are the operators of these companies, you might find that these are fictitious companies that either are registered overseas, but then are owned by political elites within their country. So at the end of the day, you find like when it comes to issues to do with tendering, these guys already get maybe information ahead of time, and then they just do those bidding. At the end, you find that the companies that control the ports and also the one that controls the tracking and also clearing and forwarding might just be the same individuals within a few clicks of the elites in the society. So at the end of the day, the government loses a lot. And if the government is not able to efficiently collect revenue, then issues to do with development, industrialization, and benefit to the Mwananchi will be minimal. So I think it's a good move now for the government to go back to the drawing board. And I think it might be an well-informed decision to do that, such that when they got into power, they are able to do that within the first 2 days. So I tend to think it's more, there's more than catches the eye at this point. Like it might be a little bit of issues to do with revenue collection. And, there's the Naivasha Inland Depot, or maybe the one in Nairobi. You might find that those ones might be, the guys who are controlling it maybe were well known in the previous government. And you find there's those conflict of interest. And also when you hear about the state capture, I tend to think this might be one of the areas where there's that aspect of state capture. So we'll just wait and see. But tend to think it might be a well-informed decision to do that, because at the end of the day, the people within the coast need to enjoy the resource that is there. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great hypothesis. Being a doctor, I believe you formulated it well. But let's talk about facts for a minute. Epiphany, if you may, I have no idea if you could be having any facts about the investment that went into the SGR. And was this really a political move by Ruto because it's a promise he made to the people of Mombasa? Or is this an economical aspect of solving the problems Kenya is facing? Epiphany.
Thank you so much, Eli, and I hope you can hear me. So, a quick one from me. A few, almost 5 points. One, we must look at these from the aspect of. I think you asked that question previously. Why did we move from Mombasa to Nairobi and to Naivasha? So, I'll start by first the justification of why did we move. Remember, the space at the Mombasa port, we were trying to ease congestion so that we increase the speed at which the cost. So the clearance process needed to be fast so that we create more revenue as much as we need to create employment. So the holdup was costing the country a lot of money. So moving them away from Mombasa to Nairobi so that any cargo destined for South Sudan, for Uganda, and for the upper side of the country, that is Nairobi and Nakuru, would be cleared in Naivasha and Nairobi concurrently. So the number one push to move it from Mombasa was to decongest the port and increase revenue, which comes with increased speed. I go to the SGR issue, which is a second factor. The SGR cost us 450 billion shillings. And with a 450 billion loan and accumulating interest on that loan every now and then, we needed to force people to have almost an assured cargo through the SGR. So the move was, because we don't have enough traffic, cargo traffic, if we allow people to move by road, the way the Chinese are charging the SGR, by road would be cheaper. It would be cheaper moving the cargoes by road. So people would really go for the trucks, and that would cost the SGR business. So we wouldn't be able to pay the loan. But now, that now brings the question, when we move back the services to Mombasa, how do we repay this loan? So the plan to repay the loan should justify the move to go back to Mombasa. Two, remember the benefits that Mombasa gets from the ports being, the goods being cleared in Mombasa is one, employment. But the rest of the country, what we get is revenue from KRA. So we need to maybe do a trade-off between which is more important. Do we create more employment to the coast people as well as affect revenue due to delays at the port, or do we want to expand that clearance so that we give cargo destined to South Sudan? In that regard, I say South Sudanese Chamber of Commerce was suggesting that a move away from Mombasa port and take the cargo clearance to Djibouti port, which is closer to them. So we need to it's a trade-off actually. We might see again this clearance retained for the cargo going to Uganda and South Sudan, because it's easier for those people to be cleared from Naivasha than it is in Mombasa. Eli.
Wow, there's spitting of numbers. I see a lot of hands there and requests for the mic. I will try and make it very easy. And for all that are joining in, we're trying to understand why the port of Mombasa is important and why the president decided to relocate the services that had been, pushed into the inland, that is Nairobi and Naivasha, back to Mombasa. What are the implications? Is it politically, economically, and of course, logistically? I see Matelon, his hand is up. I will allow him to speak, and thereafter we will have Hussein Khalid from Haki Africa, and then I will have Anna, followed by Brief Scope, in that order. Thank you, Matelon.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Eli. I mean, and all of you guys. And sorry that I am just butting in at the shortest notice because I'm sort of engaged elsewhere at the same time. But I mean, I thought this would be a great debate, even if I do not give the factual numbers that would help us to contextualize the implication, to just, throw a bit of some rungu in the crowd. And one of the things I'm thinking about is, maybe when we talk about Naivasha, we fail to understand that it's not the first internal port. We've had a similar thing at Embakasi. And I think, to the best of my recollection, just next door to my home in Nandi, we have one in Eldoret as well. These internal containers, or internal container terminals, or if you like, inland or dry ports, whichever of them is called whatever, serve a particular purpose. The first one being to decongest, the port of Mombasa, as the previous speaker just mentioned. And I think the one that we all tend to fall for is the importance of utilizing the SGR to ferry the cargo from Mombasa to either Embakasi or Naivasha, or for that matter, wherever it is that the SGR is able to take us to, because that creates revenue for the railway system, and that enables it to be, I know D doesn't agree with us, that enables them to generate revenue, which would then sort of help in repayment of the debt that went there. I have seen Welie say somewhere that if it's not going to be possible to have an internal port in Naivasha, then we should allow the Chinese to enter into a PPP, which is the private public partnership, and extend the SGR all the way to the border with Uganda, and therefore allow it to become commercial. But there is something else that I think a decongested port would easily do. So that then I go back to my hypothesis, which is, heavy cargo that is being transported from Mombasa to wherever by road is not good for our roads. I think that's something that we likely ignore. They are heavy. They cause, if you used to travel, I can't remember where I used to drive, that you see on the tarmac, there was evidence of ridging. Parts of the tarmac was basically collapsing, and then you see the tarmac was sort of moving into the center, and you could basically not drive over because it was grinding your sump and touching the car. And some of these come about because the roads are abused by carrying cargo that is heavier than the sustainable weight that our tarmac roads could withstand. And I think there is a lot of logic in using the train system or the rail system in ferrying cargo. I live in Germany, where a lot of cargo is moved both, of course, by road and by rail, but you see a substantial amount of cargo being moved by rail, and it would have made a lot of sense. And so I want to go to a hypothesis, which is the problem that we have in our country is that a lot of the things we do are informed by politics first and then economics last. And this is where the problem is. We have a very warped way of thinking. And in my opinion, whether it was Kenya Kwanza or Azimio, both of them were going to play to the gallery. And the gallery was, it was absolutely popular to say the port reverts back to Mombasa without necessarily looking at the economics behind that, which is probably why the whole decision was not informed by a well thought out plan. In my opinion, we need to delink the clearing the cargo and storage of the cargo. If the need for clearing the cargo would have been that we have the port at Mombasa to do that, then there is no justification why an internal storage terminal at Naivasha would need to be scrapped. Let's still have it. I mean, if the people at the coast want to have the cargo to be cleared there, because for them it means jobs and a sense of ownership. This is something that belongs to us, and it, yes, belongs to Kenya, but it is situated or located where we are. I think it makes, from a pride and sort of identity point of view, it makes sense. But from an economy point of view, it probably is not sustainable. So let's allow them to clear the cargo in Mombasa. Let's create the jobs there, but see the logic of, we need to transport these containers using means that do not destroy our infrastructure, A, and B, that the storage of those containers do not clog and therefore slow down, like the previous speaker said, slow down the clearance and the business. And I think this is where a bit of thinking and pragmatism is really required, to sort of take away the emotions, take away the populism, see the bigger picture, give the coast people their thing, but it doesn't need to be 100%, but allow us to also work as a country that follows science and data, and see where it is that makes sense that we really decongest the port of Mombasa to speed up the transportation in large bulk, and at the same time allow the economy down there to sustain itself. I just wanted to throw those thoughts out there and see whether maybe one of us has better way of putting it in economic terms to align them with the thinking. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prof, for that. I see Khalid already unmuted. Khalid, you want to give a quick rebut?
Yeah, just two rejoinders, huh? One to Bona Epiphany.
Hello?
First, Bona Epiphany.
Sorry. It's my error. There are two Khalids here. I'm dealing with with Fauz Khalid, and then I'll come to you later on, Khalid from Haki. Sorry about that.
Okay, I was okay. Hello.
Kindly proceed, Fauz.
Yeah. One is to Bona Epiphany, who talked about the need to use the SGR because we have to pay the Chinese. Like we have to have cargo onto the train for us to be able to pay the Chinese. But I need to remind him about the RDL, the Road Development Levy, on whatever we import in Kenya. On whatever we import in Kenya, we have to pay 1.5% of the custom value of it to the government for the railway development levy, which has been ongoing for the past 9 years since 2013. Um, every year we collect 36 billion. Every year we up to 36 to 38 billion per year of the RDL money goes to the exchequer. I think we are better off paying with that, and then leave alone that we pay the Chinese a subsidy of 1.2 B every month to run that SGR. I don't think it's economically viable for us to be paying the Chinese 1.2 billion to run our SGR. It is not a profit making venture. It's a loss making venture. We are paying them to run something that is not bringing in profits. That SGR has not broken even for the past years that it has been in operation. And then to my brother from Germany, uh, I think instead of you bashing road transport for spoiling our roads, I think we should advocate more for better contractors to construct better roads for Kenya, because the world over, trucking is there in the US. There is trucking and there is rail transport, and they go hand in hand. Look at Dubai with their TEUs. There is no SGR in Dubai, but look, they handle cargo much more than what we do in Mombasa. Singapore, they have just light rail for within the like Singapore, but look at their TEUs. They're doing 30 million TEUs a year we are only doing 1.5, and we think we are on like we are developed. You understand? So my point is this: let's advocate for contractors to be constructing better roads, because the world over, you go even in Germany where you are, there are freight trains, and there are trucks are there also, intercountry within Europe. There are trucks, and there are freight trains, and then we're in a free market economy. It should not be like a matter of people being forced to use the SGR, even when the SGR is much more expensive. Let the market decide. Like the importer decide on which mode of transport they are to use, because by the end of the day, the cost goes to the consumer. Because sometimes you find cargo descent from Mombasa is forcefully taken to Nairobi, and then the importer has to clear from Nairobi and then bring it back to Mombasa. It makes no sense. You're only making the products much more expensive, and then leave alone that we have the CFSs in Mombasa that we haven't covered.
Could you just finish on that, because there are a lot of guys on the waiting. I thought we had 2 minutes rebut, but kindly land.
Okay. Just my last point. We have CFSs in Mombasa, 23 of them. That okay, most of them have even laid off people. Half of the workforce are home. Why? Because they are redundant. So I don't know. I don't know what we are up to. It's not about Mombasa. It's about the economy of Kenya in general. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for being kind. And everyone that is joining in, I understand there's need for requesting of the mic. It can be a bit difficult to have everyone in, but I will do my best to be able to hand over the mic in good time. And therefore, I request every presenter to come in and give at least 3 minutes of their presentation, so that you can allow other speakers to come in. I understand we've had a lot of gentlemen talking, and there's one lady here who has been patient. Can we kindly allow her to go before we can go back to the previous lineup I'd given? Thank you. And Anna, it's your moment.
Yeah, thank you very much, Eli. I can see a lot of familiar face and unfamiliar faces. The real Khalid? I actually agree with him, but it's not only about the livelihoods of Mombasa that we're talking about, or the payment of the SGR. What we're missing. The point is, we need to go back to the drawing boards. When SGR was being commissioned, what was it commissioned for? How was it supposed to be paid back? Was the plan all along to take the port from Mombasa? Was that the only way that the revenues could be generated? And by building the SGR, was it cost effective? How was it built? We cannot try and fix something without we cannot just have, how do I put it? We cannot just treat the symptoms and not the disease, not the core root of the problem or the issue. The core root of the problem and the issue is money. I don't want to put it on in a nice way and make it look like a white collar thing, but in reality is pesa inaibiwa. Let me just put it bluntly that way, because we've got our neighbor that same Chinese have done railway for them, but at what cost? And at what cost did ours come to? So all these kickbacks that are being done is what is causing all this other issue. It trickles down, and the chain reaction does not stop. Once it starts, it keeps going on and on and on. So we're only focusing on the symptoms, but we're not looking at the cause root of the problem. We're only trying to treat the symptom, but not treating the actual disease. So it's not going to get us anywhere. Corruption is the cause root of everything that is happening. It's as simple as that. Because when SGR was being done and drafted and planned for, I think too many things, variables were not put into consideration. Either it was and then sidelined by corruption. So then it becomes how do we cover that up? Okay, this is another genius way of covering that up. We raise the prices on that. We let them run the SGR. We do this. We see this conjunction here. We see these roads are being whatever. And okay, let's take it to a dry port. But that is not the problem. We're taking it there. Are you telling me there is still no corruption? Somebody was saying that there's corruption in, I think it wasn't on this space, but another space saying, oh, it's much better having it there because Mombasa was so much corrupted. It was this, it was that. But there's corruption everywhere. And to be quite honest, corruption kills more than anything else, more than the COVID killed, more than any other disease kills, more than any other fight, whether even if it's when we were fighting for our independence with Mau Mau. No, corruption kills more than that because the effect of corruption goes down to the root. It goes down to the person who is in the rural area. It affects them. And we can see it now, and we've been feeling it. We're saying revenue. How much are we losing, per month through corruption? So we are focusing on, a tussle. Yes, the SGR to be brought back. Even if it gets to be brought back, it's not going to be an easy task. And when it does, then what? What happens to, where it was taken to? What happens to those people? What happened to the cries of the Mombasa people that they've been crying? They've been protesting. They've been screaming. But the same government, I am sorry to say this, but the same person who's saying that we're reverting it was in the government. He had a say. The same people who are in government in Coast now, and I'm really sorry to say this, the new governor was still there. He was still connected to the government. Whether it's the previous mayor, Joho, is still there, is still connected to the government. So either way, let's as Kenyans look, not favor, oh, this is where.
Hannah, did we lose you? Hannah, can you hear me? I hope this is not happening because we had this problem before. Can you hear me, Anna, or any other person on the line?
Don't blame me. It's not me this time.
Yes,
No,
okay.
she
I can hear
disappeared.
you.
Okay, it's Anna. I kindly request that we do our presentation in 3 minutes. There are a lot of speakers with great input. We want to have them here. And kindly, let's just restrain to 3 minutes, please. I will ask Brief Course to come later on. For now, let me allow Hussein from Haki Africa, and then we'll have a brief scope, followed by Pastor, and then Okwiri, in that order. Thank you. Okay, we seem to have lost Khalid Hussein. Brief scope, please.
Thank you very much, Eli. As usual, exciting space. And I'll go right into it. I know you're being tight with time. So I will say, I supported the idea of bottom up, because, and I was very excited to see what the side that, the prospect of what the side that proposed bottom up was going to do. But now that they're in power, of course, the cheerleading stops here, and we need to be holding them accountable, right? And I think, so the issue with this, to me, the what do you call it? The red flag, I think, is the question of, are they now making roadside decisions after promising us that they were going to be judicious, that they were going to do, what is it called? They were going to do studies, feasibility studies, explore, the feasibility, the priorities essentially were not going to just be carried out with simple executive sort of orders, because so the issue initially to me is it needs to be explored. Was the move to Naivasha done after careful study, and was it done for good purpose? I don't know that we know that, right? And so what I would hope to see coming from the new government is them actually studying and ensuring that what they're proposing to do is being done for the right reasons. Campaign promises are one thing, and it was great, when yelling about it during the campaign. But is it practical? Don't just fulfill a campaign promise. I mean, you've got the power now. Don't just do something that you proposed in the campaigns just for political reasons. It should be studied, and the fact that it's done on day one, I have to question. And I know the president was in government, so potentially he had access to the research and the studies. So maybe it is being done, but so maybe it is being done with information, but it's difficult to tell when it's done with a directive on day one, whether there's been careful study done. Now, if the previous government put it there, not because it's the best thing for the country and the economy, but rather to, as we were told in the campaign, to satisfy the business ambitions of individuals, then of course that's terrible. And so maybe we do need to go to the drawing board. But there's already been concerns that I've noticed. So, for example, I saw. And this is all on social media. So there's, of course, we have to take it off with a grain of salt. We don't know whether or not it's actual policy that's been enacted. So, for example, I saw pronouncements that Miguna is coming home, and I can't help wondering: is the president and the deputy president interfering with the activities of the immigration department? Because they're not immigration officials. They're not the cabinet secretary of whatever it is. I don't know what they're called, that deals with immigration, right? So we need to be holding this government accountable for behaving within the rule of law, which is what they have promised us to do. In terms of my own opinions about this, trains are absolutely essential. We do need high-speed rail, though. So, and the SGR, but already that time? Anyway, I'll be quick. The SGR was really poor technology. It's old technology. And what the Chinese have done, and even the railways, they're not high-speed rail. So what the Chinese have done is they're basically getting rid of their old stock, their old railways, their old trains. So it was terrible. It was a terrible idea. And that's not what we need. What we need to be doing is developing high-speed modern rail. Roads are also essential, but then and again, I don't support like having the bulk of our transportation being done on the roads, because and Singapore is a terrible idea, because is a terrible example because it's very tiny, and so you're not going to have like railways crisscrossing Singapore, and the US is another terrible example because the motor industry and the gas industry have lobbied the US government to make sure that there is no I'm going to finish real on this point, I promise. There is no connectivity on train or via railway. So that's the reason why a lot of road transportation, a lot of goods are moved on the road in the United States. So we don't need to be copying that. And then I'll just say, in terms of our infrastructure development, we need to be thinking outside of the box. We need to be developing, green, sustainable infrastructure of the future. We don't need to copy the West. We don't need to copy the United States. It's the worst example. Like, they're heavy polluters. We need to be creating high-speed rail, light rail, bike lanes, make it possible for people to move around in Nairobi and other big cities on bikes, et cetera, et cetera. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I know Brief Scope notices when my hand goes up, it is telling you have 50 seconds to finish up. Thank you so much. I'm really trying to make sure that everyone is able to speak and give us their ideas, because we want to find out the best way solution moving forward. I know I had given Hussein Khalid from Haki Africa the mic, but he dropped off. I think the space had an issue because most of the speakers dropped off. So I'm going to get it back to him, and then to Pastor and the guys that are requesting for mics on the bench, I will definitely hand over you the mics after I've released some of the mics that are now occupied. Hussein, kindly.
I didn't know there's a lot of misinformation out there about.
Hussein, can you hear us? We seem to be losing you.
Yeah, I'm here. You can't hear me?
Okay, kindly proceed.
Yeah, I was saying that I'm happy that I've joined in this Twitter space because it has made me realize that there's a lot of misinformation out there, that there are many people who don't understand what is happening, and that thank you, Ellie, for this very, very important discussion. I'm amazed at the level of lack of information that is out there. And let me just say that for those who think that there hasn't been any study, that this is just a political position, political situation, you're wrong. We have done studies. We have done countless studies. We have worked with the University of Nairobi. We have done studies with David Ndii and economists that are national and even international, and all the reports, I have not come across one single expert professional report or analysis that has said moving the port to Naivasha, to Nairobi makes economic sense. Not a single report has said that. And anyone who wants me to share with them some of these reports, please feel free, contact us at Haki Africa and we will share these reports. Secondly, I don't think it is right for anyone to pit this discussion or this issue as a cost versus national interest issue. I think that is very wrong. That is a position that we cannot, begin discussing this from, because it's not about cost versus the national. That of course people only want employment for themselves. They're not thinking about Kenya. They're not thinking about the interests of the entire country. That again is a very wrong position to begin from. Because if it is good for the coasts, it is supposed to be good for the country. There can be nothing that will ever be good for Turkana but not be good for the country. It's not about them versus us. And the moment we pit that discussion as a them versus us discussion, then we are losing the direction that we need to speak from. We have, followed up the issue, the road. I mean, I know, I think it's Professor from Germany who was making reference to our roads getting spoiled, even on the rail. Even on that rail that we are referring to, if you load goods or containers or carriages more than what is required, even the rail itself will get damaged. I think the lady spoke earlier. This is about corruption. Why would truck officers who are on way bridges allow trucks that are heavier than they should on the road? So you cannot fault a system because there are corrupt individuals. We need to deal with the corruption that we have. Even on that rail that we're saying we need to ferry goods on the rail, even that rail itself, if you overload, if you put weight more than is required, even the rail itself will get damaged. So, for me, this issue is a clear-cut issue. Anywhere in the world, it's not about what we need to demystify ourselves from. The myth that we need to demystify is clearing versus storage. We're saying, oh, the port of Mombasa was congested. It was congested because of corruption, because people could not clear their goods until they pay KRA officers or whoever they are there thousands of dollars, because it is decongested, because the government had not invested enough to clear up the space. Whatever money was spent to build the Naivasha or the Nairobi terminus, if that money was invested in Mombasa, we could have expanded the port and would be able to deal with it. So the idea of someone saying we are decongesting, that's why we need other ports. You can use those same resources to get better facilities at the Mombasa port. And we are not against SGR. as people are saying, cost people want, businesses. We are not. Kenya is a liberal economy. If I want to transport my goods on a donkey, if I want to put my container on a donkey, it is my right. It is my right. That is under the Rome Statute. The person who is ferrying the goods has a right to decide how those goods are supposed to be delivered. That is international law that Kenya signed a treaty and agreed to abide by. You cannot then come to Kenya and tell everyone that when your goods arrive, you must them on SGR or the train. Even in the most liberal of economies, whether it's in the US, whether it's in Europe, people make the choice of how they will want their goods transported. Let SGR compete with the trucks. Let SGR compete with my donkey if I want to. Allow me. This is a liberal economy. You cannot force us. You cannot tell us because the Chinese need to be paid, so the country is okay for them to suffer. And I repeat, it is not about the cost. It's about how you and me are going to suffer. And the jobs at KPA, majority of those people who are hired are not coastals. We complain every day. So it's not about jobs for cost. I think we need to disabuse our minds from that misunderstanding that these ports, when coastal people are saying port, that it is only going to benefit coastal people alone. That is very wrong. And we must be very clear that we are talking about the economic sense. And anyone who thinks that this is a political position, that we have not thought about this economically, you are wrong. We have done that. We have done countless studies. So allow me to stop there and allow the discussion to proceed. Thank you, Eli.
Thank you so much, Khalid. And we are just noticing there's so much misinformation, and there are studies that have been done in this respect. And therefore, I invite all of us to be part of the conversation. Unfortunately, I'm unable to open up the chat section. I don't know what's happening, and there seem to be a Twitter issue here and there. People are dropping off, but we will keep the conversation going either way. At this juncture, I wish to invite Pastor to speak to us, followed by a query, and then we'll have Basid coming to speak in that order, please.
All right, I'll do probably a minute or so because I need to jump into my other work meeting and then I can get back on. But this is a very exciting, conversation. I just want to put a disclaimer that the Hussein, the one that I've just spoken before, I think rubbishing other people's information and what they have read and what they have researched on, I don't think that is necessarily fair. I think Epiphany and Metaldawn, they all talked about things that we have also looked out there and read in terms of what study has been done. As always, when invited to these spaces, we spend time to read. I personally read about 3 papers, including the comparative study of dry ports in East Africa and China that I can share with that. So there's quite a number of things. Number one, quickly because of my I need to jump into another meeting. Number one is this: we have about 4 dry ports in we have we talked about Kisumu, we talked about, gentlemen talked about Eldoret, talked about the Embakasi, talked about the Naivasha one. The question is, are we, just for purposes of what's happening in Mombasa, are we taking all of them back? I think I don't think that's what I understand. And then the second point is that there's that very strong point that has been raised, I think, by every speaker about the congestion and the way things that have been, going on in Mombasa that needed to ease that congestion and everything. And of course, to obviously to benefit the other countries that benefit from us. One of the studies I read, if I can get my data correctly, my apologies. Yeah, we talked about that the data or the statistics show that and this is from Kenya Ports Authority, by the way, the one that I'm quoting here. It shows that almost 76% of all transit cargo through Mombasa is destined for Uganda, and there's of course a 10% for South Sudan and 5% for the Congo. So the question here is that I wouldn't think that when all this was set up, including the one in Naivasha, there was no study that went into it. I think there was study that went into it, and from the basic, and I would never want to claim to be an expert in this because I haven't done research on my own, is that I think what I'm foreseeing that is going to happen, and again, I'm not a prophet, so I can just consider as a prediction, is that even with the order that Ruto has even given that moving the port from Naivasha to Mombasa is not going to happen, what we are going to do is that there's going to be an understanding that we need all these, borrowing Hussein's words, to be competitive enough to increase our volume so that we can have all these services, some done in Mombasa, others done in Naivasha, and others done elsewhere. I don't think there is wrong with that. So I'm foreseeing a situation where, of course, I mean, I personally think that once all this dust settles, Ruto, being a smart person, is going to be realistic on the implication of all these kind of promises and what exactly is going to be done, and therefore all of us are going to be winners, and the country is going to benefit from all this. I do not think that I mean, to even move that by itself, I don't think it's something that's going to happen tomorrow. So I would say that my humble submission, Eli, is that I think we are going to have very good experts that are going to even consider all this that has been promised and issued. And of course, realize what kind of service are we going to live in Naivasha, what are we going to, because we have invested there, our tax money and everything, what is going to be left where, and all this work is going to be done, how we're going to expand the work in Mombasa to make sure that that work is done. I think the aspect of Naivasha was clouded with politics, and that made us even think. In fact, I was talking to other people earlier because I wanted to get their input for this meeting, and the point they were making is that some of them did not. They only thought actually that the only port that is outside Mombasa is only Naivasha, and I think that is something else that you will be surprised by listening to other people. But I appreciate the opportunity. Let's continue the conversation. I'll be right back.
Thank you so much, Pastor, for those submissions. And a critical question being raised here is it doable to actually have all these ports or points operating simultaneously so that we can ease in the issue at Mombasa? These are questions that speakers and you guys that are in the listening bench will be able to answer as we proceed with the conversation. Let's have a quick rebut from Hussein Khalid before I can invite Okwiri to speak to us.
Thank you, Eli, for the rebut opportunity. I hope the good pastor has not left. And just to clarify, I didn't rubbish anyone's comments. I was very clear that there's a lot of misinformation out there, and that there are researchers, and several people spoke, and they were saying, this is about, we have to consider the issue of cost versus national interest, that we have a loan to pay. I didn't give those words. I said that is something that was said here, and I'm saying it again and I'm repeating. It's not about cost versus the national interest. Anywhere, we have to all decide and agree. And for me, I'm repeating this again, we have to distinguish between clearing and storage. When you're talking of decongestion, wherever you will clear those goods from, there is need for clearing them when they arrive in the country. And everywhere, if you do your studies, even passengers, when you're traveling, when you get into a country, the first thing you do is you clear your papers at the point of entry. Then once those goods have been cleared, then they can be taken to different destinations within the country. So the issue of dry port is for storage purposes. That's the point we're discussing here. Where should goods be cleared? Because currently goods come into the country. We don't know if those are bombs. We don't know if they are taken all the way inside in the country and then they are cleared from there. So the point we are making here is that clearance of goods we should facilitate, because you can't store all the goods in one place. That's very clear. And that's why we have dry ports in different places, because once goods have been cleared, they've been checked, they're inside the country, then they can be taken anywhere for storage, where people now can pick their stuff and do all that. So let us understand here, what we are saying is that clearance, we're not saying close up the dry ports, that all of them should be shut down and only Mombasa should hold goods, like we are hoarding and you can't take this. No, 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 no. We're saying goods, and that is the practice across the world. And I'm giving an example of people when they travel. If you're going to Mombasa and you land in Nairobi, you clear with the immigration in Nairobi, and then you proceed to your destination wherever you're going. You can't say, I'm in Kenya. Yes, I'm landing in Nairobi, but I'm going to get my passport stamped after my next flight in Mombasa. That's not how it's done. So, what we are saying is clearance has to be at the point of entry. If goods are coming by air to Eldoret Airport, they have to be cleared at the point of entry in Eldoret before they come to Mombasa. If goods are coming in through the Kisumu, Lake Victoria in Kisumu, they have to be cleared in Kisumu, not to be transported to Naivasha for them to be cleared there. So I just wanted to make that very clear so that there is no misunderstanding of what I'm saying. But again, I appreciate everyone's comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Khalid. I believe that is now clear. We understand now the issue is about where this stuff gets cleared. And definitely we want to know where Naivasha and Nairobi comes in as the inland ports. Did things just miraculously happen, and how did we end up there? Okwiri is a former employer with Kenya Airways, and he's been in this business of cargo, and he understands how logistics work. So let's invite him and hear from him. Dan, if you can get the mic.
Good evening to you all. Can you hear me?
Good evening, sir. You are loud and clear. Kindly proceed.
I've been listening to this conversation, the thread of the conversation, and the many interesting issues. My first question is just a question. If you take a container, 40-foot container from Dubai to Mombasa, you'll pay around $1,400. Now, to move the same container from Mombasa to Uganda, you will spew out $1,700. Now, that's almost, it costs more to move goods from Mombasa to Uganda than actually getting them from Dubai or India into Mombasa. That basically means we have issues in terms of logistics, in terms of our costs, in terms of inefficiencies. And perhaps that's why things like the CFS, the container freight stations, arose. And the truth is, people were making money from this institution in terms of storage. And of course, this also spilled over into the economy of the coast. That's a fact. But then there are also other issues with this SGR. The hard truth is that the SGR cost us more than it should. That's a fact. Tanzanians are building a similar thing, but at a way cheaper cost. So the government is in a bit of a tricky scenario. We have 450 billion shillings to pay. At the same time, the cost of the SGR is expensive. So that's a scenario at the moment. So I think we should look at, we have to pay this money anyway. So we need to look at a hybrid scenario whereby it's a win-win for the SGR because we have to pay it anyway. And moving freight by road is archaic. It doesn't happen in much of the world. It does happen, yes, but because of environmental reasons, because of destruction of roads and so many things, I think it's there's a role for road, but there's also, I think we need to look forward and look at the bigger picture. SGR is there, dry ports are there. More African countries are opening dry ports. Nigeria has opened about 5 of them. South Africa is doing the same. So it's something that is caught on. So there's something in there that can help logistics. So my basic feeling about this is that yes, trucking is important. SGR costs have to come down so that they can compete with the trucking costs, because it should be actually a fair play. So we need to find ways of bringing the cost so that both of the truck has a role, SGR has a role. SGR is expensive. How do you bring the cost down? I think that's the major issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Okwiri. You've mentioned very important aspects of the SGR coming into play, and how do we bring down the cost? I see Epiphany's hand has been up. Epiphany, if it's a rebut, I'll give you a minute. If it's a statement, can you come later on? But if you take the mic, I expect it's a rebut, and then followed by Basid, and later on we will have Namuya coming in, and Hamasi in that order.
Thank you very much, Eli. So a quick one from me. I wanted to address Khalid. Unfortunately, I don't see him on the panel anymore. But my point was, I really agree with the point that we don't have to pay. We need to have freedom of choice between the mode of transport. But again, we all agree that there were inefficiencies that were happening at the port. And that's what Khalid has highlighted, where we had corruption, where we had people, KRA taking money from people to clear their cargo. So my question is, have we addressed these issues before we reactively take back the cargo to Mombasa? Have we addressed the technological challenges that existed before, where we couldn't, for example, if you are doing a motor vehicle, you would first need to do a manual download of the papers, clear that, take that to an NTSA, then again back to the port. Have we addressed those technological challenges so that once we move the cargo back, we don't lose revenue for the sake of moving the clearance back to the coast? I agree that the research done shows that there is no economic value moving away from the port. But again, one question we have to give to this government, as Brief said, is let us not be reactive. It's now not time for politicking. It's time for implementation, and the implementation needs us to be very careful with measures that we take, so that tomorrow every decision that is made will be accounted by the repercussions. So we ought to have addressed these inefficiencies at the port before moving the port, then engage all the stakeholders. Remember, the first reason that the move was quashed by the High Court was because of lack of public participation. So involving the public in this conversation will go a very long way in making sure that we don't become a reactive government. Thank you, Eli.
Thank you, Epiphany. Just on time before I actually ask you to drop off, allow me to recognize quite a number of people that are coming into the space. Rosemary Musumba, former broadcaster with VOK. I see you all the way from the US. Becky Mwiruri with KTN News. Thank you so much for being here. And I see you, Maurice, my good friend, Godfrey, MK, among others that are just coming in. And if you're coming here for the first time in our space, we do have these spaces every single Monday and Thursday where we get to write letters and open one to the president. So this is Dear Mr. President, and let's continue the conversation with the issue of the Mombasa port. With me here, it's Basid, and Basid, I welcome you. You have 3 minutes to make your presentation.
Eli, thank you for giving me the chance to speak. I'm actually called Basid. I'm a stakeholder at the port of Mombasa, and I'll be giving a few points to one of the issues that have been raised. Number one issue that I want to say is the issue of congestion. Actually, the port of Mombasa has really improved in terms of capacity. We have terminal 21, 23, and 24 that are already active, that are able to hold close to 500,000 TEUs. And then you have the alternative of 17 CFSs that are within the vicinity of the port of Mombasa, that are able to hold at least 3,000 TEUs each CFS. That comes to at least 40,000 TEUs. The issue of capacity constraints is actually not there. The reason why the SGR was being forced on the people is politics. And to be honest with you, Eli, the port of Mombasa was under the treasury, as far as I'm very much aware. From last year, it was under the command of treasury. And the president, the day before yesterday, said operations and all other pertinent issues should be reverted back to Mombasa. And the issue with the SGR is they need to reinvent the wheel. I don't see the reason why they need to concentrate more on imports, but they should go out and market Kenya and then do exports. We have Naivasha ICD that's supposed to act as an industrial park. We have Nairobi ICD. Okay, it's been improved in terms of machinery and whatnot, but it needs a lot of support in terms of stakeholder discussions being involved. But normally, what's happening now is the government just wakes up, gives a directive. No one cares about the importer. No one cares about the clearing agents. No one cares about the transporters. It's a government that just wakes up the following day, says directive has been issued on the port, and the certain containers have to be transferred to certain areas. The issue of container freight stations, actually, CFS's inception was created to act as a private port to help decongest the port, and they have actually done very well. Besides the politics behind it, they have really, really helped the port. And if you ask any port user, they will tell you they will prefer to use the CFS, mainly because importers are being given chance to have the containers stored for 30 free days, rather, or 21 free days, free storage, that is. And that gives them the time to look for, if someone is bringing 10 containers and doesn't have the warehouse to store 10 containers, you'll be able to release 5 containers today and then come back in 10 days' time, pick the other 5 containers. It gives them chance to at least to get chance to create sort of operational procedures. And the other issue also is the movement of the containers from the port of Mombasa to Nairobi. Now, if let's say the SGR moves containers to ICD, it hardly returns the empty containers back to the port. And any logistical process is once you transfer from certain point to point B, the empty container has to be returned back to the port. So they leave it hanging. They leave it in ICD. They leave it in Naivasha. The shipping line, what they do is they penalize you. There's something called demurrages. They charge you demurrages. Every day it's at least 11,000 shillings per container. So that cost is transferred to the importer. The importer transferred it to the people. So hence why you have increase of all these other products. I bring a container full of furniture. The SGR is forcing it to really to ICD. The empty container is not returned on time. As an importer, I have to intervene, look for a truck to move the empty container back to Mombasa at my cost again. And some of these containers are TBLs. TBLs means through BL. So when you have a TBL, it means the bond of contention is on the shipper. The shipper brings it to the port, the SGR moves it to the ICD, the SGR is supposed to return it back to Mombasa. They don't do that. There's always break of chain. That cost is transferred to the importer. So the personally speaking, my opinion on my 2 cents on this is it's a very good thing the president has done to revert back to the port operations back to Mombasa, simply because people in Mombasa at the port actually know what they're doing. And the SGR has been a nuisance to them. It has broken so many the supply chain. The supply chain has been broken because of the SGR, and it's not helping in any way. The people say the SGR moves containers very fast. It reaches to ICD, let's say, in 6 hours. Fine, it reaches in 6 hours. Carry will hold it for another 1 week. You see, so it doesn't help anything. More or less, actually, it's damaging. It's actually ruining everything. So my opinion will be it's a good thing for Mombasa, and we hope to achieve more. In terms of revenue collections for the SGR has been making losses for the last 3 years. It's been making losses for the last 3 years. I don't see why we should allow the SGR to continue making losses, at the same time make other stakeholders and other people who are concerned in the economy lose a lot. So you might as well put your effort and put the government's effort on one side of the economy, at least try to raise revenues from allowing people to nominate the containers wherever they want, and allow businesses to prosper rather than supporting a white elephant that's not making any money. It's making losses all the time and making making other people lose. I think that's my two opinions. Thank you, Eli.
Thank you so much, Basit. And again, I know you strained with time and so much to deliver. Gentlemen and ladies that are on the set, kindly try and limit to 3 minutes. When you see my hand popping up, it means you have 50 seconds to go to make your point. Thank you so much for your understanding. I will now welcome this is okay. I think he dropped off the line. Therefore, I will pass the mic to Hamasi. Hamasi, you have been on the campaign trail with His Excellency now President William Samoei Ruto. You have had his promises to the people of Kenya and specifically to the people of Mombasa. Was this a political move to pay back the promise, or is this anything to go with the economics? And how then can we prove it is for the benefit of the Kenyans? Hamasi.
Thank you so much, Eli. And yes, my name is Newton, and I'll just be brief as much as possible. One, you know, when Kenya Kwanza was doing its county economic forums, people thought we were mad. We were not mad. What we were doing is simply getting to understand the needs of the people. And having given the directive on the first day of inauguration, the President, William Ruto, was just implementing the will of the people of Mombasa. During the Mombasa County Economic Forums, they raised the concern about the economics of Mombasa going down on a declining trend because of the shifting of the port operations to the dry land, that is the inland container depot in Naivasha and Nairobi. So basically, the thing is about the people, and our policies are people-centered. That is one. Two, there is the aspect of freedom of choice. I've heard people say, now moving back the operations to Mombasa, is it going to close Naivasha? Is it going to close Nairobi? There's nothing like that. What the president said is the operations are going to revert back to Mombasa. And that gives the people in Mombasa, in Nairobi, and Naivasha a chance to make a choice. We have not forced anyone to clear their goods in Mombasa. What the president tried to imply is you can clear your goods in Mombasa, you can clear your goods in Nairobi or Naivasha. And based on that, you're giving people the power to choose. And that is the aspect of freedom. This freedom of choice is going to build competition so that the consumer of these services goes for where the price favors them. Let's say if SGR is charging 100,000 and the road transport is charging 80,000, as a transporter, as a businessman person, I'm able to go for the road transport than the rail transport. So it will build competition. Two, the freedom of choice will kill monopoly, because you've seen business people talking about being forced to use the SGR. That is creating monopoly. Until, as a business person or as a user of those services from SGR, you don't have a voice. If you go to the SGR, the Chinese people talk to you in a way that is not even respectful, and yet they are in our country. So that is an aspect that needs to be taken seriously. And then this issue of Naivasha and Mombasa, what basically William Ruto is trying to do, or the president, is simple. One, we cannot depend on only imports. And I like what a speaker here mentioned. Let us explore and use Naivasha as an export port, dry port, in that we can have our goods that are going outside the country. We can encourage exports and have the Naivasha ICD utilized for that particular aspect, so that people who are farming, maybe let's say in the Rift Valley, who are doing something in Nyandarua, they can easily export their goods through the Naivasha SGR, and that will also entice the managers of the SGR to make it more efficient so that exporters can utilize it. What we're just trying to say is we want to empower all sides. Another aspect of it that as Kenyans we need to look at it. As you remember, William Ruto promised to build a labor-intensive policy-guided economy. Having things done on SGR has rendered a lot of young people and business people jobless. I like what there's a lady here who mentioned about 15,000 trucks parked in Mombasa and across the country because their jobs has been taken up by SGR. Reverting this thing to Mombasa gives an opportunity to more than 30,000, that is a driver and a turnboy, who are employed within this space of the 15,000 trucks, to get back their jobs. And they are fulfilling the goal of a labor-intensive policy-guided economy. So basically, we are just trying to implement whatever we promised Kenyans. And something else is that I've heard someone say the roads will be expensive to maintain, the rail will be expensive to maintain, but the choice is for the Kenyan person. You just need that freedom. You can't be forced to use this because of this advantage. What we want to do is we want to encourage an all-round benefit to all the users of this particular space. And therefore, I believe that in the long run, the reverting of operations of the port back to Mombasa is going to be, yes, it's a political decision because the people of Mombasa cried and wished that that would be done. And looking at it from what Hussein said, all the studies have indicated there is no economic value of moving the port from Mombasa to this other side. There is devolution. When you take the most vibrant economic activity in a particular county to another county, out of selfish interests. And when I say selfish, it's because one, there's a speaker here who mentioned that the port services were moved from the Transport and Infrastructure Ministry to the Treasury Ministry because of the KRA aspect, of which that should not be the case. The services of transport are supposed to fall under the Ministry of Transport. Revenue is something different. So placing it under the Ministry of Treasury is just a way to please some masters, which I believe from where I sit has not been so much positive. There's someone who mentioned as well about loss-making SGR. All these years, it has never been a profit-making venture, despite forcing people to that particular need, because it has killed businesses. People wait for very long. There are a lot of surcharges. And having the operations revert back to Mombasa gives them the power and the will to even want to continue doing business. Thank you so much, and those are my simple submissions.
Political decision or political honesty is what probably I would say. This is what amounts from President Ruto actually deciding to do what he did by honoring his promises. And of course, looking at the economic aspects of this, they say there are a lot of turnboys and drivers that were stuck with jobless kind of situations. However, the arguments that I hear from a lot of speakers is that it doesn't implicate on our quality of roads. Many who are in Europe will argue otherwise, but that is not my call in this space. Let me just again allow a minute to Anna to finish her submission before we can do another round, and then therefore have a Q&A if any.
Thank you, Eli. I don't know how far you could hear me. I had to drop a few times from the space. Thank you very much. And I just, before I continue, I just wanted to ask Kamisi one question, because a lot of the speakers here keep referring to the SGR and the SGR. Is making loss. That's why the transports or the goods or the cargoes had to go through the SGR. My question is, why was that not addressed in the first place? Why was SGR, what was the plan for SGR in the first place when it was being built? And then the costing of it. We have our neighbors, I've repeated this, I don't know if you heard me before, They got the same thing, better and a cheaper cost. And why is it still being run by the Chinese? So we're not addressing the elephant in the house, which is the SGR. So like everybody else has to suffer, and every other constituency or every other person has to suffer because of the SGR. So he would give me the answer to that. But it's not only the town boys, or is it only the drivers or the truck owners that are getting into trouble in cost? It's the lady who sells the chai at when the trucks are parked and gives them tea, or it's the hotels or the kiosks where they eat, the places where they sleep. So that economic dripples down. Who's going to buy that? They had to close all their work, they had to close all their businesses. Where are they going to, how are they going to feed their kids? So that really had a lot of impact with cost, not only within cost, but even it got to up to Kilifi. We have the Korosho factory closed. We have a lot of things that, the idea that people would have the freedom to choose where they want to get their goods from, that is fine. But then I would still insist on the clearance to be at the port of entry, because it doesn't make any sense for me if I have to clear goods somewhere else, and where the goods are entering, I don't know. I don't know who's going to check those goods, what they are, or for security reasons, etc., etc. But the effect, nobody thought about it. For me, simply, I'm thinking it was all about how do we save SGR, and the problem with the SGR still is not answered, and it's not looked at. And the elephant in the house is costing us billions and billions of dollars every year, every month, every week, every day. And what was the reason for it being built? Why did it cost us more than it costs our neighbor? For that, I'll leave it at that, Li, for now. If Kamisi could actually just address the elephant in the house, because a lot of people are saying it's the SGR was to carry these things, the road at this, the road is at that. The roads could be allocated for trucks. We can simply do that. That this one road is for the trucks. And everywhere else, you could look at England, the Calais ports, when there was congestion, and when we were leaving the EU, there was a lot of congestion on the road. But we're still doing it through the roads. We're still doing it through the trucks. At least here we have both choices. But then it's a lame excuse saying that the roads are getting damaged and all that. I do not buy into that argument. And I can see your hands up, but if Kamisi could answer me, please. Thank you, Kamisi, kindly.
Okay, and I think the name here is Hamasi. Otherwise, you might not have anyone to answer your question if you are referring to Hamisi.
Oh, Hamasi. I'm so sorry. My mispronunciation. It's Hamasi. Yes, please, if you could.
Thank you so much. Now, my thoughts or my comments on that will be, one, yes, we have had a lot of questions raised on the cost of the construction of SGR compared to our neighbors. Those are political economic decisions that were done in the past. And that is why, as per now, and looking into the future, we want to try to do things the right way, to the benefit of the Kenyan common man. Because things have been done to benefit a few rich people than benefiting the common man. And I tell you, with time, people will notice that the decisions His Excellency the President William Ruto is making are for the common man's good. And it's just a matter of time, and I believe all these things will be addressed. But I restrain myself from commenting on the processes that were done previously in regards to the construction of the SGR, but based on the economic information that we have collected during our county economic forums, we believe moving forward, we'll be doing things differently with an economic value to the common person who is the taxpayer of this Republic of Kenya.
What are the chances of us Kenyans running the SGR than us giving the Chinese again more money to run it for us? I'm sorry, Kamisi. Sorry.
On running the SGR, there was a binding contract between the government of Kenya and the Chinese. So in regards to how we can stop that process, it has to be contractual and it has to be done as per the procedure. Because if you noted, His Excellency is not in any spirit to try force things that are illegal, that are going to cost the country more. Because if you recall, there are some damages in regards to the contract being terminated or being terminated immaturely or prematurely. And that brings in the aspect of the government of the day not wanting to subject the country to other costs that may be implicated by the choice of prematurely ending that particular contract. I hope I've responded to your query.
Thank you, Anna and Hamasi. I hope we can really concentrate on the real elephant, which is the port of Mombasa. But of course, the issue of SGR will definitely come up as we continue with the conversation. I want to allow the gentleman Briscoe to, I think it's a rebut or a question, and then I will do another round of other concluding conversations on this. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Eli. Just a quick one, and I'm glad that Hamas is on here because he's at the forefront of being able to influence policy. And while we are talking about the SGR, and to my point earlier about the fact that the SGR, quite frankly, is outdated, the trains are obsolete, and that's, it's a shame that we paid so much money for this stuff in the previous administration. The SGR should absolutely not be extended or expanded. The rail lines are obsolete. They're not for high-speed rail. We need to be building high-speed rail. If in the United States and in the United Kingdom, and I rarely ever compare us to the West in these terms as if they have everything perfect, because living here, I do know they don't have everything perfect. But if in 1900, these people were building their own railways, surely in 2022, we Kenyans have more technology than they had then. So we need to be manufacturing our own steel, building our own railways, and indeed building our own trains, and high-speed trains at that. So we are not there. We are not anywhere near there, but we absolutely should be, and there's no reason why we are not. If you compare us to 1900s Western countries that were building underground, trains, even if they were steam trains, we are far ahead of that today. So we should be looking that far ahead and doing something about stuff like that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bishop. Today you're being a gentleman, and that is what I expect from the rest of the presenters. Thank you so much for showing the lead. I want to invite Maurice. Thank you. I want to invite Maurice. Maurice, we're talking about the Mombasa port clearing issues being reverted back to Mombasa, Kenya, and the president was very vocal about it. Some have argued it is a political decision and paying the debt he owes to the people of Mombasa. Do you see it as an economic value, or is it a negative aspect, especially now the inland areas, that is Nairobi and Naivasha? What could be the reflex effect of this?
Yeah, thank you, Eli. Thank you, everybody, for this space. I think it's a good thing. I think opening back up the port of Mombasa for business, I think it's a good thing. I think the more we can have Kenyans with opportunities for business, it was already there. It's something that bringing it back and creating that employment, just from that basis alone, I would say it's a good thing. The thing that I was concerned about, and I'm glad Newton was here to explain it, I was concerned that it was going to impact negatively the other dry ports that were opened. But it sounds as if the other dry ports are going to also be allowed to operate. And in that case, I think we should celebrate it. We should just take care of all the kinks and all the issues that are going to germinate from there, and make it work. It's never ever gonna be a perfect setting for these things to happen. But we are looking at creating employment, creating opportunities, bringing in competition between SGR and the port and all the other players in that space, which eventually is going to help Kenyans. And I'm not an expert at this topic, but looking at it from the point of view of the people who are being affected by it. I think it was Basid who spoke. I was in and out. Basid, Abbas, and somebody else who spoke, Okwiri, I think, who spoke, and they gave a very good insight of what's going on, and what Newton explained. The government is trying to do sounds plausible to me, and we should allow them to make it happen, and then fix as we go. That's my opinion on that.
Thank you, Maurice. My question to the next speaker, and if you don't mind, I want to bring in Okwiri, then Muya, in that order. My question will be, how do we now make a turnaround so that the port of Mombasa continues being productive and profitable for the Kenyan population? We have a very robust railway line working throughout the country, and take advantage of the investments we've made to make profit, instead of having another Kenya Airways event happening with the SGR. And last but not least, how do we make sure that now the dry ports equally engaged to improve on moving of these cargoes that are coming into the country? Okwiri and then Muya.
There's one question that I have I would want to ask. Is I know the economy of Mombasa is down, but can you say squarely it's just because of SGR? Because look at it, the hotel industry, I think, is a major contributor, and it is down because it's not just the port it's not just the port that brings the economy. The economy of the coast down. There are many other issues. I know we are focusing on SGR, but I still have issues there. Now, my other question, I don't have the answer right now, but what percentage of cargo is actually moving on SGR? Because I'm sure that when I look at the figures of last year, 10 million tons was moved from Mombasa to Nairobi, and the SGR moved maybe about 20% of that. So I have issues there that the whole thing is being squared, being focused on SGR. I think the coast has many more issues, like the airport, whereby carriers are not being allowed, other than Kenya Airways. We are blocking charters so that we can support Kenya Airways. So it's I think there are more issues than just SGR. Thank you.
Thank you, Okwiri. And I was expecting Muya to come in. Muya, you have a contribution on that, or you want to make another submission?
Okay, thank you very much for this time. And I think I'm sorry I actually left the other time. This was the first impression. I hope the new CEO for this country was actually trying to make the first impression by just actually putting out policies directly, very fast. And I think the first thing about the dry port is because if you have to confirm to me is the functions actually of the Mombasa County government, we are actually evolved as a country. So the function of the Mombasa County had to be handling all those freight services, or actually handling the consolidation and the consolidations. But bringing into Naivasha was actually downgrading actually the Mombasa County. It was actually a very big problem to the county government. Another thing is now that the new CEO actually brought in the idea of
Muya, are you still with us? Okay, I'm sorry, but I'll have to let him on the bench for the moment, and probably when he comes back, he'll be able to continue. I see you, Real Khalid. You want to make your final submission. It is a win? It is a win for the people of Mombasa, I would say, and that should be a win for the people of Kenya at large. Is that the general feeling across the country, Khalid? Khalid, you may unmute if you want.
Okay, just the last submission is just a reminder that there are many towns between Mombasa and Nairobi that were killed by the subjugative order by the former government to like transport cargo. Uh, we have many towns, Mtondei, Machinery, Makindu, that were thriving back then. Not just business people, but even the oldest profession in the world is dead on the road. Those uh, those people are now jobless or they have moved to other towns. Those towns used to be very vibrant, but right now you go to Mtito, it's dead. And it's not just the people of Mombasa who are happy about the return of the business to Mombasa, but even Ukambani, Voi, all those towns are like the residents are happy about the new directive. So we do thank the government of President Ruto for the return of the cargo. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Real Khalid. Says that this government, the previous government, decided to prune the roots instead of the leaves and the branches. And that's why our very old professionals could not continue working. But that story for another day. Pastor, I'll try and mute. Pastor, if you may, any additional contribution to this aspect from a global view? Is it a gain for the Kenyan people if with President Uhuru's President Ruto's move? Pardon me. Okay, Pastor is not online.
Sorry,
Basid,
I'm
will you
back,
take
but
that?
I wasn't listening. I was in another meeting. I just got back. I apologize.
Okay, my question, Pastor, is we've had different contributions, and the general mood is that this was a plus for the people of Mombasa and generally for the economy with the studies made. Do you think it's a gain or a plus for the country? Noticing that some of these services being delivered affect countries such as Uganda, Sudan, South Sudan, and definitely DRC Congo, and the rest are across East Africa. What's your feeling on this?
Yeah, and I apologize if I go out of context. I will just try to restrict myself to that specific question. The first thing that you're saying, which is critically important, is that if there are studies that have been done, generally done, then I think all of us, as the gentleman from Germany said before, it's important that we all start respecting science, data, and all studies that have been done. And if they support that, and for sure the results prove that that is what is right, then we need to support it. Because really where we are right now, though some of us, of course, were not supporting the UDA movement, we are beyond that. We are talking about the country succeeding. Once the country succeeds, it's for all of us. What we are trying to avoid is a situation where people are making decisions for political reasons. People are making decisions because they want to appease to a certain voting bloc at the expense, maybe a short-term voting bloc at the expense of the long run of the importance of course, the benefit of the economic benefit of the country. Sorry, I'm just fumbling here. But and then the other thing is that even as we look at the implication of let's now worry about what is benefiting Kenya and not necessarily the region. Then we also have to look at the implications of regional integration and some of the things that even, remember when Magufuli came to power and he had to ban all the, I think it was chicken, export and everything to Tanzania and all that. It didn't go down very well. Is there ways that we can look at this in the number one, of course, to benefit our people, that's the Kenyan people, but also to look at that we don't exist just by ourselves. We need this region to be able to exist and to benefit. And in the long run, though it may not look like it right now, in the long run, it may benefit us when we integrate and we're able to trade with all these countries. So if this has been researched well, is done, and it works, I think we all need to support it. But we will not want to live in isolation just because we had made a pledge, we had made a promise, a campaign promise, and then we come to office. Realities, they hit home, and allow me to quote Hannah because she's here, and I wrote that and I wrote it somewhere else. Hannah, in another forum we were today, she said something that was extremely profound. She talked about that we expected a bag full of goodies from Father Christmas. Unfortunately, there are no goodies, and Father Christmas does not exist. The only thing we don't tell our kids that Father Christmas doesn't exist. So even as we talk about people who supported this faction, the other faction, and we're expecting all these goodies, let's pull back, have conversations like we're having here, that even when these administrations come to office, reality hits home, and they realize that, oh, whatever I promised is not deliverable at this point. But what can we do in a more realistic way to have the country? I think the coast people can benefit without some of us who had bought plots and pieces of land near the Naivasha port being punished. The point I'm making is that we can look for a win-win solution in this issue, because whatever the government did, it's our government, whether it's the one that supported before, the one that is coming in, we should not have an unpredictable governments. Every time they come in, there's a complete shift of policy that even really messes up other people's lives and economies, because then what kind of government is this? So we cannot live in a situation whereby it's so unpredictable that whoever comes in, they come with a radical change that shifts from the other one. Let's just have a smooth transition of power, but also a smooth transition of policies in a way. I'm not talking about condoning mediocrity and other things, but also having a way that we also consider both sides of the spectrum. In that way, then we ease ourselves into making the change we want to make, and then we are going to help our country, embrace everybody, don't antagonize the people in Naivasha just to please the people in Mombasa, antagonize the people in another place, but just make sure that, okay, this was done by a government. What is the blend of how we are going to solve this? That would be my contribution to what you just said, but I appreciate the opportunity as always.
Thank you so much, Pastor. And I want to draw this attention to Basid, who is in this as a stakeholder. Basid, known to me is that Mombasa is not just the only entry we can have in the coastal region. What happened to Lamu and Kilifi, for example, and why is it that the Mombasa people are not really trying to ask government to initiate this project so that we can decongest the Mombasa port if inefficiency is the problem because of the space?
Thank you, Eli. That's a very good question. The issue of Lamu Port, I think the idea behind Lamu Port was the Lamu Port was created mainly for transshipment purposes. Transshipment purposes is containers or cargo that is brought from outside and that is not meant for Kenyan market. It's supposed to hold a vessel, to hold containers temporarily as they are transferred to other destinations. The idea was brilliant because the Lamu port is actually synonymous to what's happening at Jabal Ali, that is UAE. But sorry to say this again, politics plays a major role in terms of logistics, and the Lamu port has been affected by that. They are personal interests of individuals, or rather powerful people who have their own interest to make the Lamu port function as a port, as rather an import. But the idea behind was to create or to make Lamu as a transshipment hub. And the transshipment hub was to create the LAPSIT project. I think you're very much aware. It was to support that, but it has not really taken off. They have out of formulated 21 berths that are supposed to be created, only 2 are functioning actually. Berths as in where vessels dock, where a terminal can be operated by a crane, only 2 are operating. And one of the terminals is actually not even, I don't even think it's holding any container for the last couple of months. So, and you have no major vessels that are coming. Let's say the Musk or Evergreen or Diamond, or these big vessels, they hardly dock at Lamu port because there's inefficiencies. There's no machineries. There's no personnel. So we have to look inside ourselves. We have to criticize positively the current regime that is coming in to see how they can support Lamu. But the Lamu port is not supposed to affect operations at the port of Mombasa. Mombasa port is Mombasa port. Lamu port is Lamu port. The functions are too different, and I wanted to add 2 things, just to make a few submissions and call it a night. The SGR, which is the main thing people are talking about. The SGR is a good idea, but at the wrong time. Because if you say it wants to concentrate on containers alone, it will not help. It can carry something called out-of-gauge containers. Out-of-gauge containers are containers that cannot be transported by trucks. These are irregular shaped containers. They're high-end containers. They are called out-of-gauge containers. They can carry fertilizers. Fertilizers come in fabricated containers. They cannot be carried by transport by trucks. They can carry that. They can formulate a lot of things. SGR, and the idea behind also the dry ports. The dry ports can be converted to something called free trade zones, FTZs. FTZs is a brilliant idea. It doesn't have to affect the people around Naivasha. The directive behind the president, it doesn't have to affect people in Naivasha. It doesn't have to affect people in Nairobi, but also it doesn't have to affect people in Mombasa. So for us to create a win-win situation is to convert the dry ports to hold as export centers vis-a-vis free trade zones. This will create a situation of free market for everyone. It will create businesses will be booming in Mombasa, and you'll get a lot of revenues that are going to be collected. Currently, what's happening? Mombasa Port used to collect at around actually CFSs. I'll give you a very good example. CFSs, we have 17 CFSs. Each CFS used to collect, Kere used to collect around 1.7 billion every month. Yeah. So every CFS used to make around total of time is around 24 billion every CFS, multiplied by at least, let's say, 17 CFSs. You're talking of 250 billion shillings collected from only the CFSs. That is a private depots. This cargo has all been transferred to Nairobi. People have lost their jobs. People have indirectly lost their dependencies. Where is that money gone to? So we have to be really honest with ourselves. Say if you want to support businesses in Naivasha, fine. We have to change the narrative in Naivasha. If you want to support people in Nairobi, they need to change. But Mombasa is Mombasa. This is where this is where the vessels dock. You cannot transfer port operations from where the vessels dock to a place where there is not much expertise that's happening. I think that would be my 2 cents. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Basid. And in my view, the greatest wealth any society or country will have is the wealth in its environment. I have a feeling and fear that once we roar back to life, Mombasa, we'll have trucks, tracking on those roads. We have too much carbon printing happening. And as a ripple effect, we are going to harm our environment. What kind of possible solutions can we marry together with the existing facilities to be able to address this? Anyone from the ecosystem and happy about environment matters to speak on this? I see you, Pastor. You want to talk about our generation?
Oh, sorry, no. I just wanted to probably continue appreciating the fact that, and not that the other topics haven't been well researched. I mean, today I have listened to a lot of people with data read and everything, and this is extremely important. One of the aspects, I don't know while I was away if people talked about it, I think, is the concept of privatization of the operations. I don't know if that has been addressed already, but I think that's one aspect that was almost becoming controversial not long ago when people were up in the arms saying that the port of Mombasa is being sold. And I think it was this concept of being sold when obviously that was, if I have to use the phrase of one of our friends said, that was misinformation, because privatization of port operations is actually a very common practice, which includes in the US, in the UK, and many other places. I think one of the reasons why we keep talking about this concept of congestion and efficiency and the timelines of clearing is because of lack of very good expertise on how to run these kind of operations, and that makes us have this conversation. So if it had been addressed, I apologize, but I think it's important for us at some point to start thinking that privatization of these port operations might be the best route to take.
Briscoe.
Right. Did you hear me?
We lost you, sir. We lost you.
Oh, my apologies. Oh, I apologize. Can you hear me now?
Yes, kindly proceed. Finish on that statement for a minute, please.
Yeah, I was talking about privatization. Did you hear that portion?
Maybe yes, we did. We did.
Okay, then I don't need to add anything. So that what I was talking about is that maybe that can improve our operations. Thank you very much. I apologize that I was using my Bluetooth that must have messed up things. My apologies.
Okay, thank you so much. Brief Scope, you are into agriculture and our environment issues. You want to give a last submission on that, sir?
Certainly, because I'm a big proponent of, as I mentioned earlier, green, sustainable development of infrastructure. We do need a hell of a lot more infrastructure. We do need to build it ourselves, which is the difference with the SGR, which is why it is so problematic cost-wise. Because when and this happened in a lot of Western Europe and other places that we look up to in terms of economy. They built massive infrastructure projects in the early 1930s. By the way, that was in the middle, just after the First World War and just before the Second World War. So the economies were actually struggling, but building that infrastructure was great for the economies. And so we should replicate that, but we have to do it with our own manufacturing. You cannot benefit from massive infrastructure projects if you're paying outsiders to do it. I do not, privatizing is one thing, and it's done successfully in the West. Actually not successfully, with varying degrees of success. The United States, again, is the worst place we need to be copying for our economy. It is a vulture capitalist society where the wealthy, the rich continue growing extremely wealthy, and poor continue being quite poor. And That's not what we want to replicate, especially for a young economy like ours. And privatizing in the Kenyan context is very different because we are handing over to foreign corporations and foreign governments. And that is strategically, we should not be privatizing, especially privatizing and handing over to foreigners such essential national security and resources. So by all means, that's something that should be controlled by the government. We can still improve efficiencies without privatizing it. And I don't agree that private corporations are necessarily the best, people to run anything, particularly of massive national security import. We see what has happened with KPLC, is that all the private providers that have participated, have made electricity extremely expensive. They have not ended our issues with constant blackouts. And by the way, while we're on the subject, there's something that was in the manifesto of the Kenya Kwanza manifesto, which was very much the opposite of bottom up, which I have taken issue with. And that was the president at the time promised that he would be looking at privatizing our water or the water. There was going to be an aspect of water that was going to be privatized, and that again is the exact opposite of the way in which we should be going. And while I'm at criticizing aspects of the manifesto, another thing which is completely somewhat unrelated is the issue of conservation tourism. Again, that is not bottom up. Conservation tourism is highly destructive, and the people participating in it, the UAE Western corporations, use it as a cover to essentially, just sell big game hunting, which is destructive. In terms of, I'll close with this. To go back to railway lines, I still favor transporting most of our freight via rail, but the infrastructure is not there currently. It does need to be built, and we don't need to do away with the trucking. That's not what I'm suggesting, but I think we should transition over time, right? We cannot just destroy jobs overnight, as many people have alluded to what has happened, including apparently the oldest profession, along the way. So we do need to transition to greener infrastructure, which is trains, high-speed rail in particular, but we need to build it ourselves. We can build that capacity. We should. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Abrisco, for that submission. And Abdullah, I see you are into policy and sustainability development matters. You want to give a quick one on the issue of making sure we do not harm our environment by lowering back all the trucks on our road, and how do we marry these to these existing systems to make sure that we are able to be environment friendly, even as we try to reward our voters with our election promises. Abdullah.
Thanks, Ellie. I think we need to understand the priorities because everything is locally contextualized if you look at the environment. For example, when you talk about carbon footprint and greenhouse gas emission, mainly it comes from transport sector and heavy industry. But always there's a policies and laws and everything in every country. So what you do exactly is which comes first priority between the livelihood and reduction of a greenhouse gas emission carbon footprint. In Kenya, you can see a lot of people are dependent on this through employment and jobs and income generation. If you don't have any alternative to fill that gap, then you should not prioritize protecting environment. Human protection and their livelihood is more important than the environment itself. However, that doesn't mean that you have to alienate or forget about environment. If you see the countries in Europe nowadays and the different convention is the last one in Paris. The Chinese government were opposing much of this because they find that will stop the economic growth. And remember, sometimes there's a slight a difference between protecting the environment and balancing with the economy. Sometimes it is politicized. Sometimes it can be used for different aspects of lives. So in the third world countries, mainly in Africa, there need to be a balance, strike a balance between protecting the environment and not damaging the livelihood of the community. So in that sense, then some people they might just follow what they have seen in the West blindly without understanding the local context and the problems if they straightly use the Western policies or conventions in the West created by the West, and that's
to look for human survival. Interesting
yes.
aspect there. And somebody has just told me, Ellie, thank you for that information about environment. However, even as we talk about sustainability, there's an issue to do with Changamwe. It can be an issue, Changamwe or refinery. Why don't we have our oil being refined in Turkana? That's a question coming. Anyone who wants to take a jab on that? I believe it's a pass.
I thought,
Pastor, you have your hand up, so I hope
okay.
you are answering on the Changamwe issue and oil refinery.
I was thinking Hannah would take a step at that because earlier on we had a discussion that Hannah, you're gonna go on that because I thought it's something interesting. Yeah, go ahead. Then I'll probably.
It's okay. I can go on that, and also wanted to make my final submissions, but I'll jump onto that. The oil refinery. It's not the only thing that us. I'll talk this as African now aspect. The problem is we always export our raw materials to buy it again at a cost. And I've been saying this, I think, a lot of times. Instead of us processing it, within, and then that, imagine somebody in Turkana where they have oil, but they're paying 200 now. It doesn't make any sense. If I'm paying the same as them and they're not getting any benefit as much as I am supposed to get, this just doesn't make sense. But the whole point is, as Africans, it's about time we stop exporting our raw materials because it's not benefit to us. We export it and import it again. We export the raw material and import it again at 10 times the cost, which it does not make sense. Are we incapable of processing it here? No, we're not. But then there's a lot of red tapes, there's politics behind it, there's kickbacks behind it, and all this is what is what contributes to most of African nations not processing their raw materials. But if you can see, if we can look at other countries like where can I say Thailand? Thailand said no. I'm no longer exporting my raw materials. I'm going to process it here and then export it. And that has boosted the economy. So there's a lot of things that as Africans we need to look into. And the resources we have and the way we export them does not add up. That's said and done. Somebody talked about privatization. I don't think it's the way forward. As a Kenyan and as a